Today, we're going to be talking about the one show no one can stop talking about, and to be honest, I've watched this show 2 times. We're going to be talking about Bridgerton and the fashion in it, and to talk about if it's accurate, character development, and so forth. And I can't wait to share you guys with my opinion because I'm obsessed with this show. So ready or not, keep on watching and stay tuned to see what I think and all about the facts and notes to go along with the video. So I really hope that you guys like it. Sorry, I keep looking at my viewfinder because it's so easy. But let's get right on into the video. First, I want to talk about the time period of the video, of the show. So Bridgerton took place in a time period called the Regency era. And this era lasted from between 1811 to 1820. So it was a really short time. So King George III was deemed unfit to rule, and then his son later took over as the regent until he was able to take on the throne himself. And obviously the queen was in that mix. And that is why it's called the Regency era. So this era had a lot of romanticism influence, as well as influence from the Middle Ages, which we will get back into and I will touch on as the video progresses. So going back to the Romantic era, that look can be seen all throughout this time period with their clothing. And they also pulled a Greek and Egyptian influence through embroidery. During this time, women had something called an empire waist. And if you don't know what that is when it can range from a number of definitions, but the empire waist is normally right under the bosom or somewhere between the top, mid of your stomach, if that helps. Women during this time also wore the muslin shift dress. And it was normally drawn together at the bustle by a girdle. During this time, we're also going to see silhouettes with a very square and wide neckline, and also those puff sleeves, and they're going to be a tight cap underneath, which we do see a lot in the movie, especially when we're thinking of Daphne. That is literally who they nailed it when it came to costuming. Common fabrics during this time included white lawn, muslin, and batiste. They were the most affordable. Silk fabric was still considered a luxury during this time. And as far as fabrics, during the winter, women wore linen, thin wools, and cotton. So wool is still a very expensive and heavy fabric, so we still see that during this time period as well. Grecian and Egyptian influence floated around the start of the Regency era. We see something called Gothic Influence, which also floats around and relates to and is influenced by the Middle Ages. As for men's clothing, it didn't really vary that much for about 50 years during this time. So between the 1800s and 1850, there were not any major or significant changes in men's clothing. Before this time period, you see high heels, bright colors, anything flamboyant and out there in men's clothing, and it immediately took a turn for the more simpler and refined look that we know as the shirts that men wore were almost always white. The neckline height may have varied, but it was still that same commonly ruffled neckline. And also the width, you know, could vary on how extravagant you want it to look during that time, but for the most part, they were very simple. Men also wore top hats when they dressed up, and another thing that I would like to point out is the waistcoats were slim and straight. So they had a very tapered bottom. It was very straight, slim, and taut. My kitty wants to be annoying. She's rubbing on my leg. Say hi, Kita. She's our newest baby, but back to the video, focusing. Personally, for me, this time period has my favorite men's trousers, and just a little side note, we do see like these trousers a lot today and like our high-waisted button, but it's a double-breasted button on the trousers, and it acted as one flap, so if he wanted to relieve himself, he'd have to take down the whole flap. That's the main significant trait during this time, since men's fashion doesn't vary much. The trousers are a dead giveaway of what time period that Bridgerton is set in. Alright, let's get into character development. I know we went kind of fast during the time period and background, but that is something that it covers a lot and a lot of factors go into it. So I tried to just give you guys a basis of what went down during this time period. But let's get into the character development, which is my favorite part of costuming. Now before I get into this, I want to talk about the Netflix special that the costume designer did on these periods, and I agree. I'm just gonna straight out say I think she did an amazing job. So what I love about Bridgerton is that they took creative freedoms while still appreciating the core foundation of the style of the time period, and you can tell she really appreciates the original time period. That's something that bothers me a lot, is when movies do something that's like nothing like what was happening in that time, because I really think fashion tells a story, and the story is in the clothes. It always is, in my opinion, and that's just a personal opinion as a fashion lover and history enthusiast. I just love the core appreciation of the original style of that time. Let's get into Daphne, character number 1. So Daphne is the main character. I think that her silhouettes were spot on. Her silhouette was perfect. So she had the empire waist, she had the delicate cap sleeves, although sometimes I thought they were a little bit less dramatic than what they normally were. I still really appreciate it. Sorry guys, my cat is like, her litter box is in here and she's just being a noisy little baby until I pay attention to her. But yes, as far as character development, the colors that Daphne wore were probably not the most common colors, although a lighter color palette was what you would mostly see. A lot of white was during this time because it's more expensive to dye things. I definitely think they took creative freedom in the blue, because although she wore a lighter blue in this specific dress that I'm gonna put up on the screen, it still would have been a little bit more expensive. And again, as for the men in the Bridgerton family, they were spot on as far as silhouettes, although in one of the scenes, I believe, I can't remember which brother it is, but one of the brothers is wearing a velvet kind of fabric in one of his costumes that would not have been during this time or very popular during this time, as well as one brother is wearing yellow and green in the specific poster that I'm talking about, which also wouldn't really be during this time, especially for men, because again, during this time, men strayed away from those flamboyant, outgoing, and bright colors. So that is one thing, but the brother who is wearing the yellow and green is also the artsy brother, which we see in the show. So that really does make sense as far as character development, which is really cool. Another point on the Bridgerton brothers, the youngest brother is wearing like a light blue velvety color, especially when he is in the office talking to the older brother about proposing to, I can't remember her name right now, but the mixed girl, about proposing to her. That, I don't know if anyone noticed it, but that is definitely an awesome character development tactic. So he's wearing a very light blue waistcoat jacket, and that is because like the lighter colors are seen as the more delicate and juvenile characters, and the older brothers, if you notice, generally wore darker colors because they're more mature, wiser, refined. Like that's just a little sneak of that character development, just playing with colors. I think the costume designer did an awesome job with that, subtly sneaking it in, still hitting those main core components of what people would have worn during this time. So I love that. Now on to the Featheringtons. They are not, I don't know, they're like some of my favorite. I like the family, like they're a messed up, crazy family, but I loved their costumes in the show. They were by far my favorite because they had those vibrant prints and colors and out there, and everything was crazy extravagant. And I liked that because it kind of went along with the personalities of that family, especially centered around the mom. If you don't know already, Bridgerton got renewed for 8 more seasons, so I'm freaking excited. I'm literally gonna watch it again and again and again and again and again. Like, I am watching it a second time right now, and I'm obsessed. But the mom, I get why a lot of people hate her, and I did at first, but in the end, she just wants what's best for her family. But she's definitely the head of the Featherington household, and her outfits always pop the most. She's very wild, extravagant, outgoing, bold. And she's especially bold for a woman during this time. And you can even see that throughout the story and the dynamic of her character and her marriage. Like, she definitely runs the shots. Although she is a woman during this time, she definitely takes liberty. Also, for the dad, can I just say, there were not prints like this during that time, and the specific shirt that he's wearing. Also, normal shirts for men during this time would have that huge ruffling right here, which he also didn't really wear. He was very casual in the high society sense during this time, and I think it is so cool just how wacky he dresses. But it also makes sense because he hangs out with a certain type of crowd, which you see later on in the show. I'm trying not to spoil too much, but you should definitely watch the show before you watch this video, because I'm just easily referencing the show without giving much background. So that's just my recommendation. Plus, it's bomb. Simon Hastings. I wanted to just cover him separately from all the other men, just because his silhouette, again, yes, spot on. No one would be wearing what he was wearing. He is such a bad boy in the show that I think that even reflects in his costuming. And I love that freedom that the costume creator, again, took. One, oftentimes, various times, we see him with the shirt untucked. And with someone especially of his stature, that would not be the case. He would not be caught dead with his shirt untucked, half tucked, whatever. But I think it just shows a little bit of that rugged side, and it relates to, one, his personality in the show, the people he hangs out with, like the guy who boxes, and just shows that he still has like a rugged side to him. So out of all the gentlemen in the show, Simon definitely has that like bad boy vibe. I guess for the 1800s, he has that bad boy vibe. I want to talk about a specific picture in this scene right here, when he is wearing, his collar is really tall, which was pretty common during this time, but it's just the way he wore it. If I'm not mistaken, that is not correct, just because of the layering. So normally his inside collar would be tall, then there would be ruffling, and then his vest, waistcoat, whatever. But I do give him props. I can't talk. I do give him props on his layering in this show. I loved it. Genius layered the colors. And not a lot of the other guys are seen as layered as Simon, especially in his tops, because he's such a complex character. He has that background that we don't really know about until the more we watch the show. As far as costumes, this one is my favorite character. I think she killed it. I think it was unconventional. I think it was different. I think it was out there. I think it was extravagant. The MFing Queen. The queen in this show was literally a queen when it came to fashion. I personally, if I was a costume designer, she would be the only one in genuine silk, because that was a luxurious fabric during that time. She would have been the only one able to afford it. Also, this specific scene, I thought Bridgerton really came for the culture when they did this. So she's in her afro. And I want to talk about the hair, because I didn't talk a lot about the hair, but I think the queen had the most variety in hairstyles. I mean, for the most part, the other characters wore their hair relatively the same, but the queen was always extravagant. Every time we saw her, she was in a different look. She almost looked like a different person. That also goes along with character development. I mean, she is the queen. Why wouldn't she be outdoing everybody, you know? It's her court she came to represent. She came to play. She came for the runway. She was the 1800s Vogue. You feel me? Just as a black viewer, I loved the fact that they did a lot of her natural hair. They did some braids. They did this. They did that. They took a lot of freedom with the queen's outfitting. I liked that the queen didn't assimilate to the style of everyone else. She was very different. Not really an outcast in the negative sense, but she's an outcast in the forward-thinking fashion sense. She's by far my favorite when it came to overall, when it came to Bridgerton costumes, the costume designer really came to do it, and she did her thing. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why this show was so successful, because even if you know nothing about the time period or the fashion, the costumes was always amazing to look at. It really went well with the characters and the scenes and whatever was happening in that point in time. I definitely recommend you watch the costuming episode after you finish Bridgerton, because you're like, wow, it's so cool, like all the work and stuff. So amazing. Overall, I think Bridgerton did its damn thing when it came to the costumes. I approve. Yes, there were creative freedoms taken, but obviously to make it more entertaining, to make it more, you know, luxurious to watch, you gotta take some creative freedom. And I think that the creative freedoms taken really furthered character development, so it's not like she was doing pointless things when it came to the costumes in the show. I hope I didn't go through this too fast, but I didn't want to make this video super long. Sorry about the little bell in the background, but as my video is coming to an end, now my cat decides to sleep. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'm appreciating the love and support on these videos. Be sure to like, comment, and hit that subscribe button. Stay groovy.